Welcome to another episode of the Virginians for Sports podcast. If you are listening or watching right now, thank you. You found us on our YouTube channel. And please don't be scared to hit that subscribe button. We're also on Facebook, X, Instagram, and even TikTok at VIFS for Sports. And by the way, when you hit that subscribe button, it's going to help us grow and get bigger and better and have guests like we have tonight.
Chip Tarkenton, I was a baby when you came to Richmond and started doing sports on Channel 8. Now, when I say a baby, I was 19 in all fairness. It was 1988. You came to town, right? And you were on Channel 8 for 23 years until 2011. And you were somebody I watched probably 4 or 5 days a week for a really, really long time. So I'm thrilled that you're here. I appreciate you doing this.
Kind words. Thank you very much. That makes my day. If you get recognized anymore, heck, you're thrilled with that. I promise you that. If I could be close to you, I'd give you a big hug.
So, Chip, what are you up to these days? What does a calendar year look like for you these days?
Well, a calendar year right now, and the beauty of it is that it constantly changes. And let me thank you guys for having me on. It's nice to be remembered and really appreciate the kind words even before we started rolling the record button as well. So I've been broadcasting games for years and years and years. And right now I'm doing about 30 a year for college football and college basketball. And I'll do Old Dominion home football games with ESPN Plus, broadcast those games. When Old Dominion's not playing at home or it's not an ESPN Plus game, I'll do the analyst role for VMI, which I love going to VMI as well. And then during basketball season, I do the Old Dominion women's basketball games, and there's a possibility we may add another one just in a little bit some this coming year. Barton College down in Wilson, North Carolina, where the president of the school and the athletic director both were at Mary Washington when my oldest son swam up there quite a few years ago. But I stay active with that. I still do a lot of commercial work around town and outside of town. And this past year, I taught a couple of classes at St. Christopher's and had a ball with that. So you know, when you turn 29, you have to keep going. You have to keep turning the wheel up and keep it going. And so, you know, every day to me is a fun day. We just try to find what stuff we're going to get into next.
You're putting a lot of miles on your car, it sounds like.
I am, but, you know, that drive, folks don't understand when you're doing games like that, the 2-hour drive down, the 2-hour drive back, and that's about what it is in both directions, is really cathartic to a degree, because on the way down, you can think about what you've got coming up with the game. And then on the way home, it's a great opportunity for me to call folks or to talk to people, or just you kind of rehash some of the games so that you're better prepared maybe for the next game that you do. So I've always found that to be just really the best way for me to operate. When I was doing the ABC games, you could get on an airplane and fly all over Kingdom Come and everywhere else, it seemed like sometimes. That was the hard part. That was really a bear to do that, because you were always on a plane, you were always running and gunning, and that was the tough life. This is so much easier because you know the drive is you make it every single week.
So, first of all, an honor to have you on. Like Paul said, I echo that. I've been watching you and listening to you for years. Love the stuff you've done. I could probably ask you questions for the next 4 hours, but we don't have that long. So what I would like to know, at least start off with, is this always been your dream? How did you become a sports broadcaster or a sports person? Is this something you wanted to do ever since you were a little kid?
You know, I grew up around a little bit of football in my life, and grew up around having a great bit of fortune to be able to go in the NFL locker room with my uncle and to actually be close up. When I was in Athens growing up, the University of Georgia was within just not many miles from us. And across the road was the athletic director of Georgia. Behind me was a football coach. Behind him was another football coach. And they all had guys my age. So I grew up being around football and being around athletics. So I had a love for it from the very beginning. And I knew once my days were ending playing football and basketball and running track that I really wanted to get into television. I didn't know it was going to be as big a push as it turned into. So I started in radio and spent years in newspaper too, and combined those together. And fortunately, got a job in television and was able to do it for 26 straight years of local TV. But it was the games that I really enjoyed broadcasting. I love the game day activities, what takes place in the stands as folks start filling in. And I don't know, it's just something that just has always been something I've loved. And I do mean love, because if you don't love it, you can't keep doing it this many years.
So Chip, you do play-by-play and what I would call color commentary. What do you like about both forms of broadcasting?
You know, the beauty of that is that I've had the opportunity not only to do those two positions, but also to do sidelines. And when you can do all three, I think you get a better idea of how you can help other folks, but how you can help yourself as well. Because if you know what you need as a play-by-play guy, then if you're doing the analyst role, you know how to help the play-by-play guy. Same way, if you're doing the play-by-play, if the analyst guy knows what you need, then it works so much better. Same way on the sidelines. If you see things, you can be eyes and ears on the field. And I had an unbelievable career of working for so many different great groups. You know, I worked for ABC. I got to do a game with Brent Musburger. I got to do a game with Sean McDonough. I can just run down names after names, and I don't want to be a name dropper. But if you get around these folks, it's pretty cool. We were at Purdue the first time that Purdue beat Notre Dame at Purdue. Guy by the name of Drew Brees. You may have heard of him. He was a quarterback. So I'm on the sidelines with Drew Brees after I got a nice picture of that. I kind of like that picture. So some of those things were just experiences that you just don't take for granted, and loved every minute of it. But I also loved covering Virginia Union, Virginia State when they were playing each other in CIAA games. Blast. I had a great time. I did the CIAA basketball tournament for years. Loved every minute of it. Did Southern Conference football for a long, long period of time. And it was just a unique experience for me to be able to do all of those games. Now, the reason Old Dominion has so much meaning for me is the very first television football game I did that I was broadcasting was a Citadel VMI Oyster Bowl game. And guess where it was? It was at Foreman Field at Old Dominion. Now, that field is no longer there, but SB Ballard Stadium is there now. And so to go back to where it started for me, it's just wonderful to me. I mean, it's just like this, a gift from above that I have that opportunity to go back there. So that means a lot to me. The VMI has meant a lot to me for a long time because I did a lot of games with them when I was doing the Sun Belt Conference. And Wade Branner, who was the media communication guy for 35 years, is one of my best friends. And he and I getting together is just like a home run for the money every single time. So those are the things that I cherish now. So the drive doesn't bother me. I get wound up early on Saturday mornings or on Thursday nights or whenever we're playing, and I'm ready to go as soon as I get there. I really just still love it, and I still feel like a kid doing it.
So follow-up question on that. I mean, all the things you just said, all the great games you've covered, the great experiences you've had. Tell us your favorite moment that you covered in Virginia sports.
Woo, boy, that's a tough. Kevin, I didn't tell you could get hard.
Hold on, you can give us your top 2, 3, or 4.
I think there were a couple of things that happened over the years, and you remember when NASCAR was the king in town every time they would come. I think one of my favorite happenings is the way that I got close to the Sawyer family and had a chance to really get to know all of the Sawyers. And Paul Sawyer, who was the granddaddy of them all, he got to meet my father-in-law, and they were standing together right there on pit road before the race started. In fact, they had to run the two of them off pit road so that they could start the race. And I thought, for my father-in-law, what a great gift this was for Paul Sawyer to take the time to be with him. And they were just like two guys that had known each other all their life. So that was one of the coolest things. He passed a couple of years ago, but he loved every minute of that. I think being able to take my boys to some of the events that I had an opportunity to do. And then my wife would tell you that for her, the best happening, the best game, the best good fortune I had, and you guys will remember this, for ABC on New Year's Day, the college football schedule was the Citrus Bowl, the Rose Bowl, and then the Sugar Bowl. Yeah. And I had the Citrus Bowl. And to get a New Year's Day game was a big deal in those days. And it was two teams that I knew a lot about, Michigan and Auburn. And it's a pretty good game. And a friend of mine a few years ago sent me this picture. And then I had another young lady whose name is Chris Budden. Chris is working for ESPN. I've known her a long time. She was in Charlottesville for a while. And she takes the picture of the Wall of Fame, which is all the broadcasters who have done the games. And so it's got the play-by-play guys and the analysts and then the sideline folks. And she sent that and she said, "You are a big deal." I just started laughing because I knew she had been down before, but she just made such a big deal out of it. And I thought, looking back, that's something that's pretty cool too. So I could run all night long with different games and what it meant. The Texas A&M game, the year that you may remember this, they had the big log fire that they do every year at A&M when they played that game, and it collapsed, and there were 12 young people that passed.
Yeah.
And that game, and that turned into a network game. And we had the president of Texas A&M on, and it was the first time he had spoken publicly about what took place. And for me to be the one on the sidelines doing that, that meant something a whole lot more to me than just a college football game. But there were just so many things, and I met so many great people. Lynn Swan, I love Lynn Swan. Dan Fouts was great to be around. I mean, I could just run you name after name. And, it was just a neat experience for me. But I've been very, very blessed and very, very fortunate. And that's the honest truth.
Chip, I try to be a nice guy to my co-host here, Kevin. We're going back and forth. He asks a question, you answer, then I ask a question. But I'm going to let this go back to Kevin. Kevin, do you want to explore Chip meeting Dan Fouts? Huge Charger fan.
No, I'm a huge Charger fan since I was probably 8 years old when they were Air Coryell, and I got to meet Bobby Ross. I mean, it's been a miserable experience. I will say that I'm 55, so I guess about 48 years of misery. But Dan Fouts is still one of my favorites, and I love how well he's done. He's probably a better broadcaster than he was a quarterback, and that's saying something.
He was sensational, and the A team was that game. Jack Arute was the sideline guy for Brent Musburger and Dan Fouts, and the gentleman that was the head of ABC College Football as far as the executive producer. And that man's name is Bob Goodrich. And luckily, I've been able to stay in touch with him over all these years as well. And to be with that crew and to hear Musburger in your ear, and then to hear Bob as the game went along, of course, the network was really smart at that time, because when they saw what was going on, they started peeling other parts of the country off. So I've got Bob Goodrich in my ear, and he's going, "You now have 68% of the country watching. You now have 83% of the country watching. And then before the game was over, you have every ABC affiliate in the United States watching." And of course, for Musburger, that wasn't a big deal, but for me, that was a pretty good deal. And to get Drew Brees after the game was a neat experience, to say the least, and loved every minute. I would have continued to work with ABC, but our general manager at our station here in town was not gung-ho me having to leave out early on Fridays sometimes to get to some of these games, and it made it really difficult for me to do that. And he said, "Well, you can choose. I want you to stay here, but I don't want you to do games because I want you here on Fridays." So that made it a little more difficult, and that was the decision I had to make. I was not going to make enough money just doing football to have two boys and a wife and try to keep food on the table. So that was the decision we had to make with that. But it was a great few years when I was able to do that. And they were nice about letting me do some regional games. I went to NC State, went to North Carolina, went to Maryland and Virginia. A lot of those schools were a lot of fun to do. Did the Virginia Tech game on the sidelines. I mean, it was a great experience. All of it was. Really, really, really was.
All right, Chip, you had mentioned you played football, basketball, and ran track back in the day. What positions did you play in football and basketball? And then what events did you do in track and field? And then rate yourself in each sport.
So in football, I was a quarterback, which made it awfully hard because that other guy that wore number 10, I didn't wear 10, I wore 11. But that guy wearing number 10 made it a little tough for me to be what he was. And growing up in Athens was a nightmare, especially when I was trying to play quarterback. So after my sophomore fall season, when I turned 16 in January, after that season ended, I transferred to another school in Atlanta, Georgia. Unfortunately, the name of that school, their nickname was the Vikings. So that was where it became a lot of fun. And you can imagine newspapers had a heyday with that. I loved playing football at Lakeside High School in Atlanta. I cannot tell you how much I loved it, and really how much I wished I would have had all of my high school experience there. So that was a lot of fun. Played basketball as a point guard, and this is the funniest thing, because if you're around me, I'm not known for being a mean human being and overly tough and so forth. But I was the thug for the basketball team because we didn't have one, and our coach would say, "All right, I just need you to get in there and cause some trouble with their point guard." And okay, I'd go in there and we started, causing trouble. So I did that. I ran track. I was a sprinter. I had the school record in the 100-yard dash, not 100-meter, 100-yard dash for 20 years. It was 9.8 seconds. So I was pretty quick at one point. And so I went to Western Carolina on a half football, half track scholarship. I knew I was going to have to move to wide receiver, or cat back as they called it, which was like a little flanker back. I got injured early on in practice, had a long talk with Bob Waters, who was the head coach. He died of ALS. You may remember him. He played for the San Francisco 49ers, was just a great human being. And I went to him. I said, "Coach, I can't play here." I said, I'm injured now, but I said, the only thing I can do is I can run, but folks can run with me. And he said, "Well, we don't expect you to play this year. We're going to redshirt you, and we don't expect you to play next year after that, but maybe by your senior year of what would normally be your senior year." And I went, "Good heavens, you want me to wait 4 years? I don't think I can last that long." So as I look back, there was a guy that had played at Lakeside a couple of years older than I was, who had gone to Furman. And that's really where I should have gone. But when I went up there for my visit, Art Baker was the coach. And I really wanted to play for Art Baker. He was well known in the South. But he was a military guy. And I get there on a Friday and he says, "Hey, I got good news and bad news." And I said, "Well, which one you?" He said, "I'm going to give you the bad news first." He said, "Chip, I have just accepted the job at the Citadel." And I said, "What's the good news?" And he goes, "Great weekend." So that was what it was. So he left, and a guy named Dick Sheridan, they finally hired him to coach at NC State. But he called about a month and a half later. I'd already committed to Western Carolina. And I said, "Coach Sheridan, you are probably a great human being, but I've never met you. And I don't know that I would know you, a whole group in a room. I probably couldn't pick you out. So it's hard for me to commit to you, and especially I've already committed." So that's how that happened. And it was the best thing to happen to me, because it sent me back to Georgia, and I wound up finding my way into radio, and then finding my way into newspaper and radio, and then getting that great opportunity of a lifetime to get into television. And I had a great friend who still is a dear friend, the big brother I never had, who got me in the door, really. And so it's been, I'm going to be Jimmy Stewart. It's been a wonderful life.
That's awesome. All right, so let me ask you this. Tell us somebody that we would never think of that you built a great relationship over the years with on the sports side. You interviewed this person multiple times that we would never think that either had a great personality off air, or just somebody like, and I'll give you an example, a Greg Popovich kind of guy, right? I mean, give us somebody that like that.
One of the best ones I can give you is Ben Wallace. The first time Ben Wallace was ever interviewed on television was, we had the coaches show for Virginia Union. And Ben was really nervous. He came from a small town. And having him on, I said, "Ben, you're going to be fine. I got you." And he did a really nice job that first time. But I can still call him today. And then luckily he trusts me with his number. And he'll still say, "Hey, thank you, because you helped me just by giving me that start." And I think to know what he came from and what he did and how he was able to play and what he was able to do with his career is really quite staggering to me. But just to see somebody who is really shy about a television camera, it's not that easy. Everybody thinks it is. It's not. Especially if you're not comfortable with it. But to watch him grow into what he did, and to watch him play, and to see how much he's given back, he's a wonderful, wonderful person. And just to see that, I think has been a lot of fun. Queen Harrison is another one, just because when she went to the Olympics, that was great to see her there. And then Kelly Wells also was another one who ran in the Olympics and finished third in the 2012 100-meter hurdles, got a bronze medal. And to see those folks have success and just do great things, that's what I loved. I just love seeing these young people have great things happen to them.
Yeah, I don't know any of those folks you just mentioned personally, but I know Ben has stayed in town, and Chip, you've stayed in town. What is it about Richmond? And obviously, you were raising boys with your wife, but what is it about Richmond that kept you here?
You know, and this a lot of people don't know. Both of my grandparents on my dad's side were Virginians. My grandmother, her dad was on the railroad line. He was in Howardsville, which is going in the direction of Charlottesville, and they called him the captain. That's where the train would stop. And then on my granddad's side, his dad had been a policeman for a while, and they grew up in that Norfolk, Virginia Beach area. And when I arrived in Richmond in 1988, I don't know, there was just something here, and we have always felt that this was home. And so I told my folks not long after I'd gotten here, I said, I really think I'm supposed to be in Virginia. And we have been blessed to be able to stay here. I only looked at a few jobs over the years, and really it's not a big number, but my wife and I went and talked to a couple of different stations, and then I had another couple that called me, and I don't know where they'd gotten tape because I wasn't sending anything out. But, I always talk to folks, but I just kept thinking, do I really want to leave? And then when we had the boys, there wasn't any reason for us to leave. And now, unless somebody wants me to leave, I think I'm going to stay. Unless somebody runs me out of town, I think I'm going to stay right
here. Hopefully being on this podcast isn't something that's going to run you out of town.
No.
So back in the day, what was your relationship like? And I say back in the day, let's say when cable TV hadn't taken over yet, and we were all watching Channel 6, Channel 8, mostly Channel 8, and Channel 12 for the news in the evening. What was your relationship like with the Ben Hamlins of the world? I can't remember the guy from Channel 6. Was it Greg Roberts? What was your relationship? Yeah, Ivan Schwartz. That's him. Yes.
The crazy thing, and you're going to laugh at this, but if you don't hit the air until 20 after the hour, like 6:20 or 11:20, we can't win a newscast. Not really. So none of the sports people had problems with each other. We all got on pretty good. And if somebody broke a story in front of you, we tried to break stories all the time. It wasn't the end of the world, but we could lead the newscast a lot of time if we had stuff. But, we were all going to the same events for the most part and doing somewhat of the same thing. And, I had a lot of people ask me about that with Lane Cassadani as well. And I've done some things with Lane. They did the state open that we did a couple of years ago. And he called and said, hey, come on, I want you to be the field reporter for us. And I went, come on, I'll do it. Yeah, let's go. So I'm running around on a golf cart and doing that and had a ball doing that. And there just wasn't any disdain toward anybody. The general manager at Channel 12, known him a long time. The general manager at Channel 6 was with us at Channel 8 as one of our sales guys. He's one of my closest friends. And so, it's just the sports people. And I just didn't see any reason to have hate or disdain for any of those folks. They were doing their job and they were good people. We just were doing our job and hopefully trying to get folks to watch us.
Absolutely.
Well, Chip, one of the reasons we started this podcast is obvious. We love sports. The second reason is we love the state of Virginia. The third reason is high school sports coverage. To say it's changed is not using strong enough language. It seems to me that we have moved away almost entirely in Richmond specifically. I don't think this is true in Northern Virginia or in Hampton Roads, but in Richmond, and Lane is still making it happen on Channel 6. I don't want to take anything away from Lane, but Lane can't cover everything all the time. There's 60 high schools, I think, in the Richmond metro area. Yeah. How do you think about the sports scene for high school fans of high school sports, whether it's the players themselves, their parents, their communities, versus what it was like for you back in the late 80s through the 90s and even into the 2000s?
Well, when I got here in 88, and I had been in Chattanooga, Birmingham, and Asheville. That was my first three stations before I came here. And we hit high school football like nobody's ever seen it. And when I got here and we had a helicopter, I went, good heavens, we can go crazy now. So that was our way in the door as quickly as we could by going to as many games as we could. I think our first Friday night, we had 18 or 20 games on. get a lot of video of each game, but you get the, and then we had these little bitty peewee footballs. And the cheerleaders, I would hand them bags of chunk those things because it had the name of the sponsor for the show. It also had our station on it. And I don't know how many of those things went out over the years, but it was to create excitement. And you also couldn't tell what the exact ratings were because y'all will remember this on Friday nights after people would go to the pizza places, Pizza Hut or whatever it might be. They'd put big screen TVs in there and folks would watch. So you didn't know how many people were really watching on a Friday night. But you got a good idea when that helicopter landed, when I'd get folks running up to, give me a ball, give me a ball. I don't throw away the balls, all the cheerleaders do. But that was an area that I knew you had to get the grassroots folks on your team. I was fortunate that I knew a lot about NASCAR. I was fortunate that I'd been in football, and I really hit the jackpot with meeting some folks. And I worked with some great people. Steve Bucci and Mark Lima were the guys when I first got here. Bucci had a great career. He's gotten out of the TV side. He's selling ads now. Mark Lima is with CBS. He is in D.C. where they do the nightly, a big wheel up there. I've stayed in touch with both of those guys all these years. That's because they matter to me. I can't count the number of folks who we worked together that I've stayed in touch with. Megan O'Donnell, who was here with us. And I can just run name after name after name because these folks mattered. And I think that was the other thing. I wanted folks to have a good experience with us too. And I tried to go to everything. I don't know how many parades I went to. I don't know how many events I went to because I really hope to bring some joy to some folks just by showing up and hugging people. And, I appreciated them. They took time out of their schedule to watch what we did. And I appreciated it. And John Bernier and I still close. Lisa Schaffner was one of my best friends. And when she passed, it's been still very difficult for me because and my wife would tell you, we were close. We were on the couch one night before Lisa passed, and Lisa had worked at a couple other places. And it's like 8:45 at night on a Wednesday night, and the phone's ringing. And my wife looks over. She said, "Who's that?" I said, "It's Lisa Schaffner." And she goes, "Well, you got to answer it." And so I said, "What do you want?" And she said, "They've got me doing this golf tournament, and I don't know what to wear." That's a true story. It's my wife's laughing. I'm laughing. I said, "You called me to tell you what to wear to this golf tournament so you don't." She said, "Yeah." But that's how close we were. I just loved her like you wouldn't believe. And we had that close-knit group. We really did. And so that's what makes it special. It's the people you work with. It's the places that you get to work. It's being on with you two guys. I mean, for you two to think of having me on is a big deal. And I really appreciate that because a lot of people don't take the time. They don't want to know the stories. They're not interested. You guys are. And that's awfully flattering for me because I still appreciate folks who care about me.
Well, we appreciate you. That's for sure. And I want to kind of keep going with the train of thought that you just had with the people that you loved working with. With social media out there, there's so many great blooper reels of newscasters and what's the funniest thing that happened that you can tell us that happened in your years of broadcasting that you can remember?
Well, some people think this is funny. Now, I didn't think it was funny, but they do. So at Virginia State, the woo-woo cheerleaders are world renowned, and they can dance like you wouldn't believe. They got energy. They have enthusiasm. The lady that started it is truly somebody that I just think the world of and have always thought the world of Paulette Johnson. And they've got a little documentary coming out sometime soon. And I was fortunate enough to be asked to be on that. But very few men alive have ever danced with the woo-woos live. And I did it more than once, my friends, and on camera more than once. So we did it on a Friday before the Virginia State, Virginia Union played. And you may remember Coach Lou Anderson, who was in town and wound up coaching at Virginia State at the end before he passed a year and a half or so ago. And I'm on the sidelines and Coach Lou walks up near me and he says, "I don't believe I would have done that if I'd have been you." I said, "Yeah, you wish you would have done it first." And he just started busting out laughing. I had more fun, and I can't tell you how many of those young ladies who were woo-woos that I will run into in town just out of left field. Somebody will come up and say, "You're not going to remember me, but I was a woo-woo and you danced with us." And I don't know, there's something really neat about that, to have the guts to do that. And just, I had a ball. I just thought it was, they had an outfit for me and everything. I looked good in that.
A legend. You're a legend is what that is.
I don't know, because, you know, it's like that. And then if you want to flip that a little bit, you know, we did the MDA telethon for years and years and years. And I always wanted to close it out with something special. So we started the cartwheel thing at the end of the MDA telethon every year. And it really was, I wanted to bring some entertainment value to those folks who were struggling, those young people, and to do something at the end, if we would make more money than we did the year before for the cause. And I always knew that we were going to do that before I would start chanting about it. But to have the phone calls, and over the years, folks have come up and just said, "You would do cartwheels," and they weren't very pretty, I don't think, but some people thought they were okay. But I just thought you needed to have that exclamation point at the end of that MDA telethon, because we've been on the air a long time, and to get new numbers every year, higher numbers every year. I don't know, some of those things, they meant a lot. There was a young man who his dad had bought him a squirt gun that he could control by his voice, and so if he'd yell, it'd shoot. Well, he wanted to shoot me, and I don't know how many times he shot me that day. And if I could have that little guy shoot me again with that thing, I would do it all over again. He passed not too terribly long after that. And that family is always, when I run into them, it means something, because those kids meant something to me, and so did those families, and all those folks who took their time out on a Labor Day to be on the phones and to answer the phones. It was meaningful to me, and it still is today.
Chip, you've interacted with lots of athletes, lots of coaches from, I want to say Richmond, but we can expand this to all of Virginia. I am somewhat interested in who you think the best athletes you've ever interacted with are, but more importantly, the best people, either that were athletes at the time or were coaches. Who sticks out to you?
Woo. Boy, there's so many. I got to tell you, Michael Vick was something to watch playing football, and to see him in person and to see what he could do. He was something else to see. No question about that. He could run, he could throw. He was something else. Sean Moore and Herman Moore, when they were playing together at Virginia, the Moore to Moore, and know both of those guys a little bit now, especially Sean Moore. Just a wonderful human being. Bud Foster and I have got this great relationship. Had the same with Frank Beamer and Coach Welch. A lot of people thought, wow, he's really, but Coach Welch never turned down an interview and was always really great to us. When Tech and UVA would play each other, we'd try to have a half-hour show before the game, because usually it was an ABC game. So one year I did the half-hour show live, and Governor Allen was the governor at that point. He came on live with us, and then I dropped the mic and did the ABC game with it. So it was kind of crazy to do that. It was really neat to do. So there are just so many. Dave Robbins, for one of my birthdays, his brother in North Carolina found me a jukebox for my birthday. My wife wanted to get me a jukebox. I'd always wanted a jukebox. And so Coach Robbins drove all the way to Charlotte, put it in the back of his truck, and brought it up here. You just don't get friends like that anywhere. I mean, there's just so many stories about that. But my goodness, just so many great athletes. And I mentioned a few of them with making the Olympic Games, and with Queen Harrison and with Kelly Wells. Two folks, you go to the Olympics, that's pretty good. In fact, teaching at St. Chris, there's Charlie Swanson, who was a freshman when my son was a senior there, who's now going in 100 breaststroke to the Olympic Games. And you think about that for a second, you go, that's pretty good. That's pretty cool. And to see Reno Farrell with so much success at UVA playing short, what a player. Oh, my goodness. He's just dynamite. And then there's another young man, Jaden Smith, who's a track guy. And he's in the semifinals for the 110 high hurdles coming up Thursday, and another St. Chris grad. So some of these folks, you feel connected to. So, you can run a long, long list. And I've probably run way too many for you, but something like that. Let me give you one other one. Whitney Hedgepeth, when I first got to town, had swam in college, and she got some gold medals, and she was living in Colonial Heights. Her daughter swam in the swim part of the Olympic trials last week, and I did not know that, and I almost had a heart attack because I thought, wow, how cool is that? So I sent an email trying to get in touch with Whitney, and I hope I hear back. I went on all night long, and y'all don't want to listen to me go all night long, but like I said, I've been very, very fortunate and have been very blessed with really good health, with great friends, with a wonderful family, and with just, this is just such a great place to live. We did the Randolph-Macon-Hamden-Sydney game a couple of years ago. It was the 125th meeting, I think it was, and streamed it. I got Channel 8 to do it with another dear friend of mine, Dennis Carter, who was in Lynchburg at WSET for like 40 years. In fact, I talked to Dennis the other day, and we just had the time of our lives. We did Richmond, William and Mary, their 100th meeting, when there wasn't any other places that game could have been televised because there wasn't enough network coverage to shake a stick at. We got to do that game. And, you just start going through things. We did a game with VCU basketball in the Carrier Dome against Syracuse. I mean, this is pretty good stuff. We went to Oklahoma when Billy Tubbs was coaching at Oklahoma, and they're playing VCU, and I'm going, this is pretty good. I kind of like this. When Sonny Smith came, I'd already known Sonny because he was at Auburn when I was in Birmingham. I mean, the ties just continue, and I feel very blessed that these folks have always been so great and so gracious to me, and I appreciate that. I think those folks know that.
I love it. All right, Coach Chip, last question from me, and it's going to be a little off the wall because I'm off the wall. Say you're on a deserted island, all right, and you have the ability to watch every sporting event that's going on. I don't know how that happens, but some satellite happened, and now you have a TV. You can watch every sporting event, but you can only pick one person to call all of that. Which announcer would you pick, dead or alive?
Oh boy. Can I have one from when I was a young era and one of right now? Can I do that?
Absolutely.
Because I would say that probably as a young growing up, Pat Summerall to me was just off the charts phenomenal. And his voice and just the way he handled everything, I think that he would have to be in that discussion. Today, wow, there's so many that I would tell you that I love listening to. That's a great question, Kevin. My goodness, that's really. If I had one to choose, and I'm going to say this because of the different sports that he does. That's what I think I'm going to go with. Somebody who I know could do multiple sports would be somebody like Dan Hicks. He can do just about anything. So probably him. Boy, that was a question. I ought to get points for that. That's
you get 7 points, but I don't know what your destination is. I love it. Last question for me, Chip. You clearly love sports. That's come through ever since I followed you as a broadcaster. What is it about sports that you absolutely adore?
I think it's a couple of things. First, it's really life almost in a single game, if you want to look at it that way, because you're going to have good things happen to you, you're going to have bad things happen to you, and whether you win that particular game or not, it's important. Do you give all you have? Do you support those who are on your team, and do you win and or lose with class? Are you still a good person when the game is over? Do you shake hands with the other team? Do you just try to be a good person? And that's the one thing that I have tried to do, I think, all of my life, especially knowing how fortunate I am to get to do this. I try to help everybody that I can. There have been a lot of people that I've had a chance to work with that never had the opportunity before to put a headset on and didn't understand half of what we were doing. And to try to help them along, or to help young people, a lot of the college students are shooting videos at some of these games now, and you sit there and you go, I can probably help them a little bit. And it's very rewarding, because when you find out what these young people go do, and when you find out some of the things that they've had to go through to get where they are, I think that's the manna that keeps me going, is just exactly trying to make some positive impacts for some folks who may not have had it any other way. And you just don't know when those situations come along, and you feel very fortunate when you can do something to help somebody. And I try to do that. I try to help interns, and I don't know how many folks over the years call and say, "Hey, can you help me get a job?" And I go, "Where do you want to work? What are you trying to do?" I don't usually say no to anybody. In fact, I don't ever remember saying no unless it was just something I had no clue about. And I went, "I can't help you. I don't know who to help you with." But I tried to be there, being here for them, and try to let them know, "Hey, I'm on your team. I'll support you any way that I can."
Well, Chip, I thank you so much for doing this. Real treat for us to have you on here, and I wish you nothing but the best going forward.
Well, I've been dealing with both. Y'all said some awfully nice things, and I'm glad I didn't get emotional tonight with it, because, a lot of people don't say all those nice things all the time. A lot of people say, "My gosh, you're really old now, aren't you?" I go, "No, I'm 29, because I believe I am." I feel like it's been great for me, and hopefully we didn't take y'all too far off the road. Because a lot of times the questions, I remember this too, you ask a question and somebody goes in a completely different direction. I try to stay on the track, but there's too many stories that can happen along the way. And a lot of times that's what happens. I get going pretty good. So I've enjoyed being with y'all, and I'm glad you're still awake.
Love it. Thank you.
Thanks, Chip.